Hello YouTube chess lovers and my friends, this is Gunjan here. Welcome to my 5th episode of Lowenthal Sicilian Repertoire from the black perspective. In this episode, we are going to look at the move 8 Queen to D2, which arises after the following move order: E4, C5, Knight to F3, Knight to C6, D4, C captures D4, Knight captures D4, E5, Knight to B5, A6, Knight to D6 check, Bishop captures D6, Queen captures D6, Queen to F6, attacking the Queen, and now Queen to D2. As per the database, there are roughly 500 FIDE games played with this move, and against this, as I have highlighted over here, Black has two popular choices. Amongst them, I am not going to concentrate on the move Queen to G6. The simple reason is, after the move F3, not only White Queen can protect the G2, but White light square Bishop can be liberated, and some of the position arises from this variation are not that great for the Black camp. So my suggestion is, you should completely avoid this and played our universal move at this position, namely Knight G to E7. So we are looking at this thematic break D5, and that's why 90% of the game continue with Knight to C3, which is in fact the main line from this position. However, there are few games continue with C4 with not so great result for the White camp, as it simply allowed the move Knight to D4, and I have attached a model game in the PGN which will give you a very good idea how to play against the move C4. Knight to C3, what else? And after this move, here comes the first memory marker, guys. Just remember the simple plan of campaign by Black camp. What Black wants to do is, he wants to play D6 followed by castle and bishop to E6, and these two rooks are going to come to D8 and C8, and then at the right time Black is going to play the move D5 with a very good initiative. So this is more or less our trademark plan if White does not play actively and continue with some passive moves. You should also note that Queen to D2 also jam up the queen side, so it is not easy for White to quickly go onto the queen side castle, and that gives us ample time to activate all our pieces. So now let's see some of the critical responses by White and how we can handle it. D6, first obvious move, and as per the theory, the main move in this position is B3, trying to free up the dark square bishop and quickly goes onto the queenside castle. However, White has frequently tried other moves, and let's see each by turn. The first move I want to consider is bishop to C4, which is very obvious, controlling the D5 square. But however, after the move bishop to E6, Black actually achieve what he wants to do. If bishop to B3, then knight to D4 is a very strong reply. And again, White doesn't want to capture this bishop. The simple reason is, after queen captures E6, castle on the king side, Black has a very simple plan to execute, namely castle and then quick F5, which gives him a very good position. So accordingly, the best move in this position is Knight to D5. However, we know from our past video that whenever the knight appears on the D5 square, we are going to chop it off. And again, White has to be careful how he is going to recapture this piece. For example, White can already go wrong if he continue with bishop captures D5, as after the move queen to G6, I think White is in a big trouble. He cannot even play G3. The simple reason is, after the move knight to D4, there are two threats are looming and White cannot parry both of them. Of course, white needs to save the queen, and whenever the queen moves, let's say queen to d3, we have this simple move. Knight captures d5, pawn captures d5, queen captures queen, pawn takes, and knight to c2 check wins the game on the spot. There is one game in the database which continue with castle on the king side, which is again a dubious move, and the simple refutation is, yup, this trademark move, knight to d4, looking at that juicy fork. Queen to d1, getting out of the fork, but what white missed is, after knight captures d5, pawn captures d5, and the move knight captures c2, white has completely hopeless position. Just one move, rook to b1, and black deliver this ultimate blow. Boom! White resigned. So it is pretty clear that here white has to capture with the e-pawn, and after that, my recommendation is you should continue with queen to h4, attacking the bishop. Now taking the c6 knight is a pretty bad idea for white camp. The simple reason is, after pawn captures c6, queen captures c4, pawn captures b7, we have queen to e4 check, which not only regain the pawn, but after castle and black castles, you can see the pressure is mounting on b2, which is making hard to develop this dark square bishop. And on top, black has this wonderful center, and later on he can push forward with d5, d4. All in all, I think this position is quite better for the black camp. Instead of capturing on c6, what happens if white continue with bishop to b3? Well, that is the case between two 2100 rated opponent, where white obviously continue with bishop to b3. After that, black continue with this annoying move, queen to e4 check. Hitting on g2, so white response is force, white has to play king to f1, and now comes knight to d4. Okay, white try to annoy black with f3, but it doesn't matter, as after queen to f5, king to f2, so giving a space to the rook to come on d or the e file. Well, no matter, black just castle on the king side, and after the move c3, obviously black chop up this bishop pair. Pawn takes b3, and now comes rook to c8, grabbing the typical open Sicilian c-file. White continue with rook to d1, and after the move rook to c5. As you can see from the rating, white was low rated. I think he was playing for the draw with this move, queen to g5. White's idea is, after queen takes, bishop takes, f6, bishop to h4, rook captures d5, rook captures d5, knight captures d5. He wants to get his pawn back with rook to d1. And yes, indeed, if white can reach the equality, there are chances of getting draw from this position. But unfortunately, what white missed is, after the move knight to e7, suddenly he cannot take the d6 pawn, as after the move knight to f5, he is going to lose a piece. Well, in the game, he tried the move g4, stopping knight to f5, but now it's too late, as after g5, attacking the bishop, bishop to g3 and the move d5, black consolidate his extra pawn and later on indeed managed to win the game. You can check rest of the game in the PGN, which will give you a very good idea how easily black converted his advantage. The second move I want to consider is queen to g5, which personally I don't like it, and the refutation goes as follows. Black has this amazing counter resource, knight to b4, attacking the weak c2 pawn. After queen takes and pawn takes, if bishop to d3, then black can continue with rook to g8, and later on anytime black can take this bishop and get a good position. So accordingly, the best response here is king to d1, defending on the c2 pawn. Well, if this is the base continuation in queen to g5 line, then we should more than happy to play against this variation. I'm just giving you a sample line which will highlight how easy black position is. Black should continue with bishop to e6, controlling the d5 square, and after the move a3, we can happily retrieve our knight back to c6. The plan you have to remember is, no matter here whatever white plays, let's say bishop to e3, we are going to get rid of our double pawn with f5, and then quickly followed by castle on the queen side, which not only gives black a tremendous center, but black all pieces are very active and white is literally struggling for the activity. So considering all these factors, I think b3 is reasonably the main line at this junction. Okay, we are going to castle on the king side, and now white has two choices. White can play bishop to a3, which threatens the d6 pawn, but in fact it is just an illusion and black can literally ignore it and continue with bishop to e6. Now let's see what happens if white capture on d6. The first move I want to consider is queen captures d6, which is not a good capture as rook to d8 come with a tempo, and after the move queen to c5, black get tremendous initiative with knight to d4 attacking on weak c2 pawn. Here it doesn't matter whether white continue with castle or bishop to d3. Let's say in one of the game white continue with castle on the king side. Black played the obvious move, queen captures f2, threatening a checkmate and regaining the pawn back. And after the move bishop to d3, black just saved his knight with knight to g6. Rook to f1 happened on the board, but as there is no threats are looming, black is more than happy to chop the pawns with queen captures g2. White become now desperate and he tried to attack the queen all the time with rook to g1, queen captures s2, rook to h1, queen to f2, rook to f1. So we have some cat and mouse going on with rook sac following the queen, but after queen check, king to b1, just one move and white can resign. Well, before I move on, I like you to pause this video and find out a decisive blow by black which literally kills the white. Did you find it? Let's see. The star move is b6. And white queen is running out of the square. If queen to c7, then rook to c8 is a very strong reply. And in the game, white indeed play queen captures b6, which in fact one of the best reply as per the engine. But after the decisive move, knight captures f2, white lose the game on the spot. The simple reason is, after queen takes and knight takes, black is attacking two spots and white cannot defend both of them. Okay, let's check out what happens after bishop captures d6. Well, more or less we have the same response rook a to d8. Bishop captures e7, attacking the queen. Queen captures e7. And after the obvious move, bishop to d3, black has this nice move, knight to b4. So black's idea is very simple. He wants to create a backward d3 pawn, which he can take it later part in the middle game. White can choose either side castle, but the scenario will not change. For example, I have reached this position in one of the rapid game where my opponent continued with castle on the king side. I responded with rook to d7. So planning is very simple. I want to double up and then take my pawn back. My opponent plays knight to d1. So his idea is very nice that if I continue with rook to d8, then he wants to play knight to b2 and then consolidate his bishop. No matter, black played energetically with f5, attacking on e4. White defended with f3, and after f captures e4, f captures e4, black has this sneaky check, queen to c5, which I think decide the game on the spot. White cannot block the check with either of the piece, so in the game he decided to continue with queen to e3. But this again doesn't turn out well, as after queen takes, knight captures d3. White remove the one pair of rook with rook captures f8, king captures f8, and now pawn captures d3. But see the difference now. Not only black get his pawn back with attacking the knight, but once white played the move king to f2, the rook is posted on the second rank, and after king to f3 and the move b5. Yes, in terms of material we have equality, but in terms of rook placement, black literally owned the white. So it is very obvious that taking the d6 pawn is a risky way to play for the white camp. So that is why the most accurate response here is to castle on the queen side. And after that, we are going to continue with our thematic plan. Yup, rook to c8, planning to go rook to d8, and then d5. Well, again, taking on d6 while your queen is sitting on d2 is a risky way to play. So in one game, white continue with queen to e3, and now indeed he is threatening to capture on d6. What amazed me about this variation is, still black can go the move rook to d8, and white still cannot take the pawn. Why? Let's see. What happens after bishop captures d6? Well, again, there are some tactical problems. Start with knight to d4. If bishop drops back to a3, then b5 is a very strong reply, and black initiative run down on the queen side. So in the game, white tried the move bishop captures e7, and after queen captures e7, he stopped the queen check with king to b2, same time defending the c3 knight. So at first sight, it looks like white has consolidated his extra pawn, right? Well, guess what? After black's next few replies, rook to c6, bishop to d3, and rook to c8, suddenly white get a completely losing position. His knight get attacked, and in the game he played the move knight to e2, which is a big time disaster, as there is a forcing mate happens after this move. And I hope you see it, right? Yup, it starts with rook captures c2 check, bishop captures c2, rook to c2 check, king to b1, and now the star move, queen to a3, and white cannot stop both the checkmates. So finally, let's see the mainline move with bishop to b2. Our response is very obvious, bishop to e6. And now white has three choices. Number 1, queen captures d6 at this position is a big time disaster, as after rook to d8, queen to c5, and now knight to d4, again the same sequence give white a great headache. He cannot even castle at this time. The simple reason is after queen captures f2, bishop to d3. This time around bishop is sitting on b2, which gives black this winning option. Knight captures b3 and white queen is a simply goner. The second option, castle, is not good either. The simple reason is we can continue with our thematic pattern, rook a to c8. And if you take on d6, then I will take on f2. So accordingly, one of the high-level game in the database continue with king to b1, which I think already an inaccurate, as it allowed our thematic break, d5. Yup. The point is, after pawn takes, knight takes, and bishop takes, our bishop is wonderfully eyeing at g2 square. And in the next move, we are going to continue with rook to d8 with a very active game. And if white thinks that he can win the piece with queen captures d5, well, this is the last time he is going to play this, as after the accurate response, rook c to d8, white got a completely losing position. Last but not least, what happens if white continue with knight to d5? Well, I think this is the only variation where we are not going to capture this knight. The simple reason is our c knight doesn't have any good squares to go. So my recommendation here is, remember this second important memory marker, queen to h4, attacking the weak e4 pawn. And this has actually happened between Peter Lacko and Vallejo pawns, a very high level game, where Lacko continue with knight captures e7, knight captures e7, and now the move bishop to d3, defending the e4 pawn. Well, frankly speaking, whenever the bishop d3 happen, we know what to do. Yup, our thematic break, d5, and black is already looking quite better from this position. If e captures d5, then bishop captures d5 is a very strong reply. And the important point you need to know is, after bishop captures e5, which looks like white is winning a pawn, but in fact it's not, as after d captures e4, black is in a completely driving seat. If bishop moves, then rook to d8 is a very strong reply, and tactically we are holding on to our pawn. For example, if white continue with g3, then we have queen to h5 and white is going to lose a piece. So that's not a good choice. And you might ask, what about bishop to g3? Well, same story, as we are going to continue with queen to f6, and again white is going to lose a piece. So considering all these options, white continue with queen to e3, but that allows to expand on queen side with d4. After queen to g3, queen takes, pawn takes, and the move knight to c6. Yes, indeed, white has a bishop pair, but look at the position, it is completely blocked, and that is why black has slight advantage in this position. Well, white tried to open up the position with c3, but doesn't matter. Black played rook f to d8, and after king to e2, here comes the winning move of the game, a5, and you can see the simple idea. Black wants to play a4 and then target the weak a2 pawn, which surprisingly enough, white cannot do anything about it. Well, he tried c captures d4, knight captures d4 check, and after king to e3, black indeed pushed the pawn to a4 square. After f4 and f6, white find nothing better than capture on a4, but that simply activates the black rooks with rook captures a4, and if a3 then b5 is a very strong reply. White position already become desperate and he tried the move rook h to c1, grabbing the c file, and I think black made an inaccurate move with rook captures a2, which allow white to come back in the game, and in fact the game has been drawn. But I can show you the improvement, and black should continue at this position with b5. The point is, after pawn takes, rook to c5, black has this dynamic resource, bishop to f5, not only getting rid of the bishop pair, but see the activity and pressure black can generate from this position. A sample line can run like this: bishop takes, pawn takes. So now indeed white has to move the rook as knight to c2 fork is in the air. And it doesn't matter wherever this rook moves, let's say rook to c1, we can continue with rook captures a2, attacking the bishop. That poor bishop cannot move, as after let's say bishop to c3, black can simply checkmate the white king. The best white can do over here is bishop captures d4, but after pawn takes, king to f3, rook check, king to e2, rook to e3 check, king to f2, rook to f8 check, king to g1, and now the winning move, d3. And it turns out that after whole this sequence, not only black emerged with an extra pawn, but those two passers can finish up the game very quickly. White cannot even touch on c4. The simple reason is, after d2, rook to d1 and the move rook to d1 check, black is deciding the game on the spot. Well, that's it guys. With this broad coverage, I think you are now confident enough to meet the move queen to d2. Remember this simple and effective plan of campaign by black. So almost against all the white variation, we want to play d6, castle and bishop to e6 and put our rook on d and c file, which gives black a very comfortable and active game. Well, thank you for watching this video. Feel free to like, subscribe and comment, and I'll meet you in my next episode very soon. Bye and take care.